So for posterity, what we're doing is we're going to take this site. We've wiped out all the style sheets and we're going to start them over again. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the typography. So some of you know my hack for Google Fonts. Pick the category you want. I'm going to go with a sans serif. And then if you go to font properties and narrow it down by number of styles, really good, super useful typefaces have lots of styles to them. And so if you raise that, you can get your 987 Google fonts down to 39 pretty quickly. So let's see. Here's our typefaces we have to look at. And so we're looking for something that says modern school. If you've never thought about typefaces before, like they're culture sponges. The reason that you think that like something, let's see, let's take a look at display. So the reason you feel certain ways about this, about each of these typefaces, or like this one's kind of fun, and this one has this like, you can almost see the coffee stains and like the cigarette and the typewriter. Or like this one also looks like a little bit silly and comic booky. This one looks like Art Deco, like super formal. This one looks like video games. If you've never thought about this before, why? They're just fucking squiggles. They're dots on a screen. Why do you feel anyway about them? And the reason why is that typefaces are just sponges for culture. So they have been used in video gamey kinds of ways, or formal kinds of ways, or comic booky kind of ways. And so now, when you see that typeface, you make that association. Like type is wild, like the way that we can perceive so much meaning out of like little squiggles. So we want to tap into that. We want to like say modern school with this site. So looking through these, there's some that like, a lot of these are pretty close. Like there's not a ton of difference between work sans and Nunito sans. And so you start taking a look at like, all right, well, what is different on these? Because they're not identical. Here's a difference. So this one has circles for the dots. So we got one there, one on the comma, one on the I. This one uses squares. Square there, square on the comma, square on the period. This L has this, I don't know what that's called. This little tail hanging off of it. This one doesn't. This G is like a regular lowercase g. This is called a double story G. It's a little bit more formal. So between those two, Nunito sans I think would be a better fit. Franklin, that's not bad. Some of these are like, this would feel weird. Like I would be exhausted seeing that all over the site. Vera sans condensed. Condensed typefaces are like usually a little bit better for headings. Sometimes better for mobile too. Something like this would be completely unreadable if you have to read like more than this amount of it. It just gets exhausting to read something that's all capital letters all the time. All right, so I actually did kind of dig that Nunito sans. Yeah, let's go with that. All right, so it comes in a variety of styles and weights, which is good. We want that. Let's go with a black. Let's go with a 400. Let's go with a 400 italic.
What does that number mean?
That's the weight. So a 200 is a light weight. And so you can see the weight increasing. It's the same typeface. It makes the same shapes, but this is what it looks like as it gets more weight.
What are the units that's defined by?
I think they're just relative. Like they're like ordinal numbers. 500 is more than 400, but past that, who gives a shit?
Okay.
They might reference something specific, but I don't think they do. 400 is normal, 700 is bold, and 300 is light, generally speaking. And so something like 900 is more than bold, it's black. Black is as thick as you get. And this is a really important thing. It's not just like, you can pull this into Photoshop or something and just add lines around the characters and hope to maintain the same readability of the typeface. All of these different styles are actually like separate designs, which is kind of fucking cool if you think about it. Like the space inside of the D starts there, and it's a little bit smaller here, but it's not linearly smaller all the way through. Little stuff like that. All right, so a 400 and italic also. An italic font isn't just sideways or like tilted over. It's also a completely separate design from the Roman typeface or the regular one. All right, so we got 3 different styles here. This gives us a place to start. We might need more. We might not need the italic or the black letter, but start here. So we can import these in. And if I go over here and, not what I want to do. Maybe put that there. And then I got to tell the document to use it. So there's a font family is Nunito Sans with a fallback to sans serif. So if for whatever reason, like for example, the internet is down, it can't get Nunito Sans from the font API, or the user doesn't have it already installed, or whatever. Whatever the default sans serif on the user's computer is, just use that instead.
So if you need to add a font later on, you basically would just have to make sure that the URL doesn't change, and then all that will be automated if it probably would change the URL, and you just change the URL out, and then you have access.
Yep. Correct. All right, so let's see what that did. Holy smokes! Without doing a whole lot else, this already looks a shit ton better. Next thing I'm noticing is having a hard time evaluating this though, because this heading is bigger and this is in between and whatever else. It's because the browser's giving you some styles right off the bat. And you know what? I don't want them. So I'm going to bring in a Meyer reset. And I could put this right here. Feels a little wasteful though. Let's start making some separate files. So I can go into the source for this, into the styles folder, and I'm going to touch reset SCSS. And then we're going to import it here.
So that line of code, so that thing that you just imported, it basically resets default CSS.
Correct. Does it need the extension? Boop. That's why. And it didn't like it. All right. There we go. Cool. Notice how the headings aren't any different than the size of anything else. We have eliminated the browser styles. Cool. So what next? Let's figure out some colors. And actually, I'm going to also make a typography file. And a scales file and a colors file. So we're going to keep anything relating to typography in that typography file. I'm going to keep anything related to like sizes of any kind in one file. I'm going to keep all the colors in one file. So we can take that typography, take this out. Well, do that a little bit differently. I'm going to pull this over into here, and I'm going to make a font stack called like body font. So we do this with a mix-in in Sass. We'll call it body font, and it's just going to have that in it. So now to use that, we can say include body font, and it'll read it in from that file. So I don't think that has quotes, maybe. All right, still in business. Very nice. Let's bring those colors in. So one of the ways that I like to do the colors thing, I should probably find a faster way to do this, but whatever, is I just make swatches to start with. So I'm going to have a UL with one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 9. And I'm going to call this UL primary. And then we need one for blacks. We need one for greens, yellows, and reds. All right, so we'll have primary. I'll call this grays. I'm going to call this success. I'm going to call this warning. I'm going to call this alert. All right, cool. So here's how we use this. So for primary, actually primary and grays and what do I call these? Grays, success, warning, alert. Warning, success, alert. For all of the LIs in those, let's give them a width of 30 pixels, a height of 30 pixels, and a margin right of 16 pixels and a margin bottom of 16 pixels. All right, and then if you want to see where I'm going with this, if I set it to a color right now, like green, oop, what didn't it like? Something. Oh, they're in there. Oh, I see why. I'm going to say display flex flex flow, row, no wrap. All right. And then, oh, not the color, background color. That's why. All right, cool. So these are our swatches. And we're going to use these to design our color system for this. So we don't want to do background color green for all of them. I'm going to put a border on them though. Border, 1 pixel, solid, and a really light gray. So like something like that. There we go. Now, the way this works is within primary, we're going to have li, and then nth child 1, and then give it a background color like HSL. Let's see, our primary color is going to be some kind of blue. It's going to be based on that Flatiron blue. So red, green, blue, somewhere in the neighborhood of 240. Cool. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, oops. All right, so I've got some of these showing up there. Did I add too many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, I did. All right, so I've got these 9 blues there. And the next thing I'm going to do is hide everything except the 1st, the 5th, and the 9th. Like that. And the goal here is that we want the middle one to be like sort of a baseline kind of one. We want the first one to be like dark enough to work well as text. And then we want 9 to be super light, like a faint wash that might be like the background of something, for example. So let's get a little bit more specific with the colors here. If I pull out this eyedropper and look at that Flatiron blue, let's figure out what the HSL of that is. Hex to HSL. Cool. So let's say that's our 5. All right, so that's going to be the middle. So then we want like a super dark version of that. So one way to do that would be to just way knock down the lightness on it. It's a little bit not enough of the base color, because I'm still going to have grays to work with. A little bit better. Yeah, that's good. And then I want a crazy light version of it also. Just a kiss of color. what's 85% look like? Might be able to go a little bit more than that. Very cool. So I've got a super dark one, super light one. Now we do that same process with 7 and 3. So let's swap these out. All right, so we want to make as gradual like a transition between those as we can. Like, see, let's do this 7 first. So if we've got 45% there and 90% there, what's 65% look like? I'm gonna try knocking down the saturation just a little bit. Okay, it's a place to start. And then this one, 1 is 15, 5 is 45. What would 30 look like? You might think you could just do these mathematically, and you can kind of get close, but you always need to do some visual correction for it. Okay, that's not terrible. All right, let's see if we can get 1, 2, and 3. So maybe 22 on this one. I feel like knocking the saturation down on this one a little bit. Then there we go. That's a little bit better. And then let's see if we can get 3, 4, 5. So maybe that's back up there, and this is something like 38. Yeah, that's all right. And then 5, 6, 7. Maybe 90 there and 55 there. Okay. And then 7, 8, 9. Okay, there we go. So now we have 9 completely usable versions of our primary color. And like the purpose of putting these into the variables is that when I'm like actually working with the CSS, I don't want to look up colors and shit. I just want to go lighter or darker. And now I have that. So I'm only gonna do one more of these. I'm gonna do the grays because the grays are like our best friends. These are, if you have nothing else, you should have a pretty good selection of grays. So let's do the same process for grays. So a gray is usually super desaturated. So if I knock the saturation down to 10% on all of these, cool, that's not bad. Like, I could probably even put just a little bit more of the color in. When you're doing your grays, it helps to have just a little kiss of whatever your like primary color is in there also. Yeah, you see how like this looks less like boring ass gray and more like gunmetal. Having those two things have some relationship with each other really helps with that. Okay, and I'll leave the rest as an exercise to you. All right, so now that I have those colors figured out, I'm going to put them in my colors file. So those are the primary colors. The way I tend to do this is like primary color 1, and then whatever the thing is. Uh, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You. And you. You. And 6. And 9. So in practice, I'm going to do something like, I think that my button should have a background color of primary color 5. I go, that's a little bit too dark. Well, what about that? It's getting better. I kind of like that. All right, well, that's too light. Oh, cool. So then it should be 6. That's how you end up using this in a design system. All right, next thing we want is our grays and okay, so I've got a color system in place. I think I'm going to use it also right over here. I'm going to default my color to gray 1 instead of whatever the default black is. And hey, there we go. So it's not pure black anymore. And once this is like one of my hot tips for making your app not look like shit. Using like pure black is aggressive. So if we change that to like actual 000 black, it's real subtle, but like it's one of the elements that makes your stuff look so GeoCities-y. All right. So we've got that. We've got our typography. And we can get rid of all the swatch placeholder stuff. Cool. So get rid of these. All right, awesome. So next thing that I want to do, let's try getting this header under control. So, well, actually, you know what? Let's sketch around a little bit with layout. Let me grab my tablet.
I think I missed the chunk where you said why you were opening up this software.
Oh, we're gonna sketch around a little bit with some design ideas for layout. So one of the things I might do is just think of all of the different ways that I think this could be done. So maybe we do this like header up in the corner, like with the logo. And then what else is on the page? We've got some navigation here, some secondary navigation here, and then like we call this master detail there. So that's like, well, shoot, the way that we have it on the site now is we've got some stuff there. So like the logo here, some navigation here. We have that primary navigation here. We have the secondary navigation there. And then we have the detail here. That's kind of what I went with on the actual site. It's not the only way we could do it though. We could do something that's like one of these sidebar kind of things where maybe each of those is like collapsed into a single thing where it's like, and then the detail is all here. And maybe there's like those navigation options are there instead. We could also do one that's like, trying to think of like how stores work with breadcrumbs and stuff. It's kind of the one I just did. What about shitty Amazon style? Where we do a big crappy banner on top with whatever our stuff is, and then you put navigation options right under that and then we hide everything in lots of layers of menus. And so like this comes out and it's got like these menu options, and that's where like the standards are. And then otherwise we have the detail in here. So lots of different ways we could lay this out. I picked this one because I think it works really well for this kind of content. So let's see if we can recreate something kind of like that. So this would be this big header, these navigation options. Yeah, just that. So we've got this modal that you guys never see. It's just for instructors. Really, inside of app, we have these two things. We have the main and the app header. So inside of app, we got those. So maybe this is a good, I think of a couple ways we can do this. We can flex it. So we can say display flex and make it flow column, no wrap. And then constrain the width. Okay, not bad. Then we could say, since it's flexed, we could center all of that content too. Justify content center. Oops, actually, I gotta do this way. Main, and then app header. That's what I call it, right? App header. App dash header, very nice. Set the width of those, and then wait for it. Uh-oh, computer's slowing down. Main and app header, justifying content. All right, let's take a look at the element inspector. Okay, good. Those are constrained. Why are you not? Oh, I know why. So justify content and align items are really similar. In fact, they do the exact same thing. One of them does it on the cross axis and one of them does it on the primary axis. By default, when you flex something, it's going to try to put all of the stuff in a row. And if it has to, it'll start wrapping it. So in this case, your primary axis is left to right. So if you justify content center, it tries to put everything, jam everything in the center, left to right. If you do space between, it tries to space them all out from each other. If you do flex start, it tries to put them all at the beginning. That's the primary axis. You can also, and then the cross axis is up and down. This is what align items does. You have all the same options, except you can align something up and down. So this is if it's flex flow row. If it's flex flow columns, those just get reversed. So now the primary axis is top to bottom and the cross axis is left to right. So we want to align items center. There we go. Now it's kind of pulled out from the sides a little bit. One of the things that, this is a browser default that I think is a mistake, irritates me a little bit. So we look at the size of these containers, that's the header, that's the main. Womp womp, how come the Flatiron School thing is going out the side of it? There's two resets that I would add to the Maya reset that you can pretty much do every time. One of them is images, max width, 100%. Whoa, what do you know? Fixes the problem. There's no reason for an image to be bigger than its container unless like you want to override that. But this should be your default. And then the other one that you can pretty much always do is on every single element, box sizing border box. If you've ever set two things to 100% before and their like lines are still kind of off, this is what fixes that. All right, so now I'm constraining this a little bit. Not bad. Now I want to take a look at that header and see if I can get those to go like spread apart like. So for this, I want to go into the component for that, this app header. All right, so app header has two children, an H1 and a section. Why didn't you section for that? That looks more like a nav to me. Whatever. So app header. And this is already driving me crazy. Nav. All right. So I want to spread those apart. Neat. That sounds like a good use case for Flex. So if I flex these children, the default row, totally fine. So I'm going to justify content space and the space between those wicked lines. All right, so this is working now. Cool. I want to make that logo smaller too. How's about say, hey, for your H1 children, should you happen to have any images in those, let's set the width to 200 pixels. All right, a little bit better. Also, I have this span in there. This is for accessibility because the picture says Flatiron School, but if you're using a screen reader doesn't know what your picture says. So you still want an element in there that the screen reader can hit, but user doesn't want to see it, or your sighted user rather. So hide it. Bye-bye. All right, this is getting better by the second. So next thing that I want us to look at is padding. So this is another thing that is making your site look like GeoCity stuff, is that you're not really using padding correctly. And for padding, just like we did with colors, we want to make a design system. Now with scales, there's one that I just kind of start with by default pretty much always. And it is in my wiki under design and refactoring UI here. So if I go to scales, put all those in there. Oops, shit. I'm going to call 16 the baseline, like that. And then I made this up. I've never seen somebody else do this. I've been doing it for a couple years, and I fucking love it. But if you go Googling for this, no one will know what you're talking about. I guess what I mean. So I call that small, this extra small, and this extra, extra small. And then I go the other way with the other ones. So what I end up doing when I'm trying to use the design system is a lot of this is just adding and removing X's. It's a very good, like, don't think about it too hard approach to doing this kind of thing. So all these numbers have a mathematical relationship to each other. It's not golden ratio. If you've read about the golden ratio before, it's kind of horseshit. The best part of this is, so it's like, it shows up all over nature, and then they'll superimpose it over the Nautilus shell. So Nautilus golden ratio. You see that over and over again, but that one's pretty good. But you'll have ones like this, whereas like you're kind of supposed to go, yeah, it is sort of doing that. I was like, what are you talking about? No, that doesn't line up with that at all. Like, it's sort of close, but like that's lined up. And so the golden ratio is like 0.65 or 0.62 or something like that. But there's like one study after another that shows that like anything that's over about 6 up to about a 0.75, like all of those are perfectly acceptable. And so like 0.75 is like, I think, one that I go to a little bit more readily than the golden ratio. And I think that that's what this one is based off of also. So we've got that one for scales, and there's a similar one for type. It doesn't go quite as high. And it has a few more like in-betweeny values that are really useful to have. So same thing though, I'm going to call this baseline font, or sorry, font baseline, and then font small, and font extra small. So like, there's no font that you would knock down to 4 pixels. There's no font you would knock up to 768 pixels, but it would also be ridiculous to have a value for just margins or something that are in between 16 and 24. You totally like could get a lot of mileage out of like a 20, an 18 to 20 and a 24. Can anyone tell me what the difference between a typeface and a font is? No one?
A typeface is literally like what you're seeing, and then the font like includes line weights and different styles. Right?
You're 90% of the way there. So Nanido Sans is a typeface. Nanido Sans at 16 pixels, 400 weight is a font. So once upon a time, in the early days of type, you would you'd have a typeface. Typeface would be designed by a type foundry. They would come up with the style of the typeface, whether the O's are perfect circles, or whether they like kind of have a tilt to them, or whether the inner circle is at the same angle as the outer circle. So like they'd figure those things out as sort of the style of it. And then if you, as like a new owner of a Gutenberg press, wanted to buy this typeface, what you would buy is a font. And the font was a bunch of letters on little iron blocks. And then you would line them up in little rows. And then you'd put ink on them and you'd smash them onto the page, or you'd roll the page over them, or whatever. So that's those were fonts. So they'd be in like giant heavy ass boxes, and like you'd run out of E's and things like that. But that's why a font is different than a typeface. You might have 7 fonts for that typeface. All right, so we've got our scales. Let's start using them. So over in the app header, we pull in that.
Can I ask clarification on that? So the typeface is basically the shape, all the different types of shapes that could exist, and then you're saying the font is the actual application of those shapes, and
and
the size they are, and where you're putting them, and well, I guess not where you're putting them, but
these are fonts. That's a font. That's a font. That's a font. That's a font. Nonito Sans is a typeface.
Okay. Does font inherently have a size specification?
In like its traditional meaning, yes. And they would design the type differently at different sizes. On the web, that's still technically true, which is why, for example, we refer to something's font size as like font size, but if I say that the entire body font should have text decoration underline. Font baseline. Because it needs to come in scales. Cool, so now everything in the app is underlined. But why is it font size but text decoration? Because whether or not it's underlined doesn't have anything to do with the font. The size does. But like on the web, they don't ship the 16 pixel version of the font and the 24 pixel version of the font. Like that's not a thing, but yes, that is technically part of the definition of a font.
Okay.
Okay, so we're doing padding on the app header. So a really good piece of advice I got is start with too much and then take it away. If you go the other way, you stop adding padding when something stops actively looking bad, which isn't the same as it looking good. So I'm going to do none on the sides, but I'm going to start with way too much for the top and bottom. I don't all the way hate that. let's add even more, way too much. Okay, that's too much. So you take away an X, take away another X. Still too much. It's getting in the ballpark. That's about right. So, and that was a great example of like using the design system. I wasn't going like, it looks okay at 72 pixels. What about at a 68 or like some shit like that? Just take an X off and see how it looks. You've already done the work of making the design system. All right, cool. So next thing, this nav over here. So that, it's got these links on it. I'm gonna say that that's in the nav. So for, what are these called? Router links? For any anchor that follows another anchor, it should have a margin left of, I'll start with baseline. All right, a little bit more spread out. How does it look with large? A little better, actually. XL? That's a little too much. Cool, not bad. I've also sort of, I'm gonna say those could be bigger. Yeah, what if I say all of the anchors have a font size of large? Nope, don't like it. Oop, I didn't want large though, I wanted font large. Yeah, I was like, why did that jump so much? There we go, that's a little better. Yeah, cool, that works. Now it looks like the nav is taking too much visual weight away from the logo. So I can make the logo a little bit bigger. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't super like that, like, take a look at this with the element inspector on. Okay, I don't like that the Flatiron school, so like where the letters are resting, that's called the baseline, and that this is like on top of that. I want those to share a baseline. So let's see how I can do that. This container is the nav. All right, so they're in the container. So one way I could do that is to flex them. Man, flex is handy. And then, so they're still rowed, but I want to control the cross axis. So that is align items to the end. All right, not bad, not bad. Now, that doesn't actually super line up the baseline because they're lined up with the actual container, but that Flatiron School image still has like a little bit of shit on it. This is exactly the kind of thing that code comments are for. So they do margin bottom 4 pixels. I can put visual alignment as a code comment on that, and that's completely appropriate because like I'm going to pick some random pixel value, well not random, some derived pixel value that visually aligns those. But if you were just looking through the code and saw that, that would be like a real what the fuck kind of moment. So a comment there is helpful. All right, so that pushed it up just a little bit. And then this is a good opportunity to just use the dev tool. So like that thing right there, if you click on that and press up and down, you can play with it a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, 7 pixels. All right, that's not a terrible header. So let's see if we can get this primary navigation like to do something cool. Oh, actually one more. It's bugging me a little bit that the left edge of this logo isn't lined up with this left edge. So we can do the exact same like visual alignment trick by taking this H1 and giving it a negative margin. So you say negative, I don't know, 10 pixels. Moves it over to the left. So this one, right? Nope, I'm doing it to the entire header. Nope, there. Cool. So same thing. I can knock that down. That looks about right to me. 23 pixels. Okay, not bad. So now these share a baseline, and this is up against the edge of that. All right, let's do the those like 1 and 2 button looking kind of things. So those are those are going to be in the router view. So that's it's like a navigation thing. Nope. Are they called modules? Yeah, here we go. Box link. That's what they're called. All right. So a box link is a little wrapper around an anchor tag. I don't super love the name box link because it kind of makes an assumption of how it's supposed to look, but whatever, YOLO. So I'm going to say that, okay, we're going to do individual box links, and then we're going to work on how they're kind of laid out. So I'm going to say every box link should have some padding all the way around it. And it should, I'll start with baseline.
Kyle, how did you choose 16 to be your baseline, or is that kind of just the standard thing?
I chose it, and it is also like a pretty good starting place.
Okay.
All right, so it's got the padding on it now. Why don't I also give it a background color of primary 5. Primary color 5. All right, beautiful. And then I don't want these to have any text decoration on them. These little underlines. Let's get rid of those. Oops, the anchors inside of them should have no text decoration. There we go. And then here's another trick that I think will help make your app look less like shit. Instead of like trying to have like a colored background like that and then try to like make it gray or something work inside of it, use a lighter version of the same color. So if this is primary color 9, for example, like that's not going to work, but that already looks so much better. It looks even better than like just doing a pure white wood. And this is a great opportunity to pull in our 700 weight. Anytime you're doing a reversed text like this, where the text is light and the background is dark, you have to up the weight a little bit. So we can say like font weight 900. And that makes that so much easier to read. Cool. And now I'm gonna say these box links. So these are coming in as part of these LIs, which is why they're taking up the whole row. As an LI is a block element by default. Oh, good gravy. Did I really do that? Uh-oh. Name them both modules. All right. So LIs, well, let's see. Modules that have a nav in them that has a modules. That modules I want to display flex and then make it a row wrap. All right, it's a little bit better. And I want my modules, each one of those to have a, I'll say any LI that follows an LI should have a margin left baseline. Okay, that's too far. So let's make that small. What's happening here? Oh, that is 12 pixels. Maybe excess. There we go. That's a little bit better. And I want this entire nav to have a margin under it of large XL. Way too much. Better. Good. I like that. And then, cool. Now I need some way to hint with these 1s and 2s that which one's active for one, and I need a way to show that like they're intended to be clickable. So I'm gonna do two things. One is, all right, so you'll notice, I see this on like student projects sometimes, with my mouse in here, it's not until I'm right over the 2 that the hand shows up. that's a problem because like I also can't click anywhere but exactly on that thing. That sucks. So what you do instead is you apply that to the anchor, and anchors are inline elements by default, and so padding doesn't apply to inline elements, but you can make it an inline block, and then that's exactly what it'll do. So now, hey, look at that. It's a hand all the way through. So all we did is like just kind of blow up that anchor to be the entire size of the LI. So there is no LI that isn't part of the anchor. So that's thing number one. Now I give things that are currently active this class of active. So and that's on BoxLink. So I can say and active. If I put it after all of this, it'll override anything that's active. So what if actually I do this? What if this thing I'm doing now, what if I call that my active style? And then I do something else for my inactive, like maybe use one of my grays. And maybe a lighter one, maybe a little lighter. That's too light. Okay, and then we can do a really similar thing with the colors on these. We just pick a lighter gray. Yeah, it draws a lot less attention than if I did. If I do that, like the white sort of like shoots out. If I do that, kind of chills in the background a little bit. But now that's chilling in the background. Now it sort of feels like the active one isn't like popping quite enough. So maybe that is a good one for doing some white. So maybe I add pure white as an option up here. One of the reasons I like doing white as a variable is, so like that's a pure white. Just like pure black is a little aggressive, pure white can be a little bit aggressive also. So we can like still step that back just a little bit and like at least have some control over that. So if I say that's my white, maybe the active ones use that. All right, nice. So that one sort of pops a little bit, and we got some navigation going. Another thing that's going to help with identifying that visually as like it's supposed to be clickable, and we'll also use more dimensions of the page, is adding a little bit of shadow to it. Because since those are buttons, we want them to kind of sit on top of the page, and the way you indicate that is with a shadow. So we do something like box shadow. And so box shadows are, what is your left and right offset? What is your top and bottom offset? What's your blur radius? And what's the color? So left and right, none. And then top and bottom, I want it, the light should be coming from the top. And so I want a little bit of shadow on the bottom. So I'm gonna say 2 pixels of that. And then very low, so I could blur the entire radius. Really, if it's supposed to be not that high off the page, things that aren't high off the page cast very hard shadows. or things that are way high up off the page have very diffuse shadows. So make the blur radius on that like 1. But see how like harsh that shadow is? That's a black shadow. So we can use one of our grays to really like soften that up. Yeah, dope. What if I do no blur radius at all? It's a little flat. What if I make this smaller too? That's a little bit better. A little bit darker. All right, cool. So now those, just a little bit, they just sit on top of the page and give it a touch more dimension. Cool, I'm gonna pause here. Questions?
That whole lesson blew my mind.
Good.
It's gonna take me like another year before I could do all that, at least.
Well, cool, it took me longer than that, so hey, if you can do it in a year, you're a badass, baby.
What were the 3 kind of default things that you overrode?
The max width of images and basically everything's box sizing.
Cool.
There's a
Brian
more
put out a Zoom
performant.
call, just so you know. I don't know if you saw that.
What was that?
Brian put out a Zoom call, just so you know. I don't know if y'all saw that.
No, for what? Oh shit! You guys have a survey to do. That's why. Cool. Other questions?
Later. Thank you.
Yep. Cheers.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yep.